a video on how to prepare yourself for the ISN test for science fiction and technical writing. Please make sure your notebook contains the cover with your English 8 Advanced title, year, period, your Wordle, and also your first and last name. When you get ready to prepare yourself for the ISN test, you simply need to make sure that everything is taped in and complete. So I will start on the table of contents. With your table of contents, you want to make sure the entire thing is filled in. Please see the photo attached to this assignment for a picture of the table of contents. Next, on page 12, you should have a complexity and depth icon chart on page 12. If you flip, on page 13, there should be the Ender's Game Jigsaw activity. Again, this is my example from the PowerPoint. Yours will be handwritten. This is, again, in your notebook, handwritten, not on a template like this. But again, Jigsaw activity for Ender's Game is on page 13. On page 14, I have the Ender's Game timeline that you've completed in class. So the Ender's Game timeline gets taped and folded onto page 14. Okay, on page number 15, there should be a warm-up from September 6th that reminds you how would the quote connect to Ender's Game, and that was a quote on science fiction. On page 16 is your science fiction notes, and again, this is notes on how science fiction contains the different elements. These again are handwritten as I've printed out the PowerPoint, but yours will be handwritten. On page 17, I have a warm-up from 9-9. Asking about how heroes are shaped more by their enemies or by their allies, and if the price is too high, to ask of a hero. And again, we have our ology activity right below it, where you were asked to choose an ology that you had never heard of before, define it, and then give a storyline. And you should have 5 examples of those ologies. Directly across on page 18 should be the ology sheet defining the different types of ologies in science. If I flip then to page 19, there should be a T-chart and technology discussion questions on the pros and cons of using technology in our life and society. Page 20, there should be the T-chart from the story Future Tense, where we read the short story science fiction about Gary and Dr. Proctor and the alien abduction science fiction story. So this should be complete with all the information on the T-chart. On page 21, there is a warm-up from 9-12. And then also the graphic organizer chart we created that went with the story that's on page 22 of Ray Bradbury's There Will Come Soft Rains. And we taped that story in on page 22. On page 23, I have a warm-up from 9-17 where you wrote a continuation short story to the science fiction story Future Tense. And you described what happened to Gary and Dr. Proctor at the end of the story. Page 24 is Jerry Was a Man, the Elements of Science Fiction, where we analyzed the parts of the story for Jerry Was a Man, and again, that's on page 28. On page 25 is Analyzing Technical Instructions. This is where I gave you the multiple different types of manuals, and you analyze them for different aspects. So that should be on page 25. And 26 directly across on 26, again, should be technical writing notes, where you filled in those notes. Again, these notes are posted in our School Loop Locker, so you can access those and see where those are at. Okay, on page 27, I have a warm-up from 9-27, asking you the 4 elements of science fiction and providing examples. We did that for the warm-up before the quiz. And then also hinge taped on top of that are the directions for how to read a microwave, giving us examples on excellent technical writing and also how to read technical directions. Across from that should be the rubric for how to write an effective instructional manual rubric. So that rubric should be on 28. Some of you may also have put the technical tool of the future writing project paper in here, and that's fine. Not required, but it's fine if you taped it in on 28 as well. On page 29, I have the directions, the technical writing piece we did for how to send a text message from your phone, and that warm-up was on page 29. And on page 30 was your technical verbal writing directions, where we moved the shapes. You had an observer, a direction giver, and someone who built the art picture, and the writing here should be done for each of those roles. 31 was the activity we did similar to the ones with the shapes, except this time you built with origami. So observers practicing technical writing skills on page 31. And lastly, on page 32 is the active reader for the enormous crocodile, and I've been ripped how to read and write and how to play chess was on the back side, so I hinge taped that on. So that is what should be all completed and organized for your ISN test. Everything should be taped in, and you should hopefully do very well on this test.